She's just a janitor. What's she gonna do? Scare them with a wet floor sign? The nurse whispered mockingly as she watched the small woman push her cleaning cart past the security checkpoint. The janitor didn't respond. She just kept her head down, mopping silently. But 17 minutes later, when two armed men burst through the hospital doors, everyone ran screaming. Everyone except the floor lady. With surgical precision, she grabbed the fallen doctor's Glock. 2 shots, 2 bodies, 2 seconds. Who was she? From which country are you watching? Stay if you believe real warriors don't wear uniforms. Her name was Isabel Moreau. Mid-42nd, small frame, hair always tucked neatly under a hospital cap. She worked the night shift at Valley Grove Medical Center in New Mexico. When the corridors fell silent and the chaos of the day gave way to whispered conversations and beeping monitors, nobody really knew her. Her employment file was thin, sparse, almost suspiciously so. Address: temporary housing. Location: undisclosed. Emergency contact: none listed. Previous employment: various cleaning services. References: available upon request, but nobody ever requested them. No social media presence. No photos on anyone's phone. No birthday celebrations in the break room. Isabel Moreau was a ghost who happened to mop floors. She preferred working in the trauma zone, the place most staff avoided, where the air hung heavy with the metallic scent of blood and the weight of life and death decisions, where broken bodies arrived in the middle of the night and sometimes didn't leave whole. But for Isabel, this was the most peaceful place in the hospital. While others saw chaos and tragedy, she found something that felt familiar. The doctors called her Ghost Mop not cruelly, but because she had this uncanny ability to appear exactly where she was needed, clean up the mess, and disappear before anyone could properly thank her. One particular night, Dr. Beaumont was rushing a surgical tray down the hallway when a scalpel bounced off and clattered toward a storm drain. Without looking up from her mopping, Isabel flicked her mop handle with surgical precision. The scalpel arced through the air and landed perfectly back on the tray. Dr. Beaumont stopped dead in his tracks, stared at her, then at the scalpel, then back at her. But Isabel had already moved on to the next section of floor, humming softly to herself. The young resident convinced himself he'd imagined it. People don't develop that kind of precision mopping hospital floors, do they? Another incident. A new security guard was struggling to reassemble his radio after dropping it. The tiny screws had scattered across the floor. Isabel glanced over while wringing out her mop. In one fluid motion, she used the mop handle to flick each screw 1, 2, 3, 4 directly into the guard's palm with perfect accuracy. Lucky shots, he muttered, but his hands were shaking slightly as he screwed the radio back together. A month later, during a particularly busy trauma night, Dr. Falk was suturing a patient when her surgical light began flickering. The bulb was loose. Without being asked, Isabel appeared beside her with a stepladder, adjusted the light with one quick twist, and disappeared back into the shadows. She moves like she's done this before, Dr. Falk mentioned to a colleague later. But done what? Fix lights? Or something else? The nurses started noticing other things. How Isabel could navigate the hospital in complete darkness during power outages. How she always seemed to know exactly where medical supplies were located, even in storage areas she'd never been assigned to clean. How she could estimate the weight of medical equipment just by looking at it. Maybe she worked in a hospital before, suggested Colette from the day shift. Or maybe, whispered Heinrich from security, she's just really good at paying attention. Nobody suspected the truth, that their quiet night shift janitor had once been one of the most lethal operatives in the Western Hemisphere. That the steady hands now gripping a mop had once held weapons that could end lives from impossible distances. That the woman who cleaned up their messes had spent 7 years cleaning up much deadlier messes in places that didn't appear on any map. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves, especially when the past comes knocking with loaded guns and violent intentions. The night shift at Valley Grove was about to discover who Isabel Moreau really was. 1 a.m. The trauma ward had settled into its familiar rhythm of controlled urgency. Only a few patients remained. A motorcycle accident victim getting stitches from Dr. Gustav, an elderly woman with chest pains being monitored, and a construction worker sleeping off a concussion. Isabel was methodically cleaning the blood-stained floor near Bay 3, when the overhead lights began to flicker. Once, twice, then steady again. She paused. In her previous life, flickering lights meant someone was cutting power lines. Old habits die hard, and her survival instincts were screaming. The first scream came from the main corridor. Then, gunshots sharp, echoing cracks that sent ice through everyone's veins. Two figures in black tactical gear burst through the trauma ward doors. The first carried a sawed-off shotgun. The second held a .45 caliber pistol with practiced familiarity. Both wore ski masks and moved with military precision. "Where is patient B-47? The shotgun wielder bellowed. "Bring him out now, or everyone dies." Patient B-47 was Victor Lange, a suspected cartel informant who'd been brought in 3 hours earlier with 2 bullets in his abdomen. He was currently sedated and stable in the secure wing. But these men didn't look like they cared about his medical condition. Chaos erupted instantly. A security guard named Sven drew his weapon, but he was too slow. The pistol-wielding gunman put 2 rounds center mass before Sven could clear his holster. The guard crumpled, his service weapon, a Glock 17, skittering across the polished floor. Nurses scattered like startled birds, screaming as they dove behind medical carts and computer stations. The motorcycle accident victim rolled off his gurney despite his injuries, army crawling toward the supply closet. Dr. Gustav stepped protectively in front of his elderly patient, hands raised. "Listen, we can work this out. The patient you want is in..." The shotgun roared. Dr. Gustav spun and collapsed, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers as he hit the ground hard. His backup weapon, a smaller Glock he kept in his lab coat, tumbled out and slid under a nearby medical cart. 30 seconds. The gunman with the pistol shouted. "Then we start executing people." In the midst of this pandemonium, only one person wasn't running or screaming or hiding. Isabel had taken 3 steps backward into the shadow of a supply shelf. To anyone glancing her way, she would have looked terrified, a small woman cowering with her cleaning supplies. But her eyes weren't showing fear. They were calculating. Distance to closest gunman, 12 feet. Distance to Dr. Gustav's fallen weapon, 8 feet. Ammunition visible in pistol, extended magazine, probably 15 rounds. Shotgun shells. Heard 2 chambers click when he loaded double barrel. Exit routes. Main door blocked. Emergency exit 30 feet behind her. Civilians in potential crossfire. 4 direct, 2 indirect. This mental inventory took her exactly 1.7 seconds. The gunman with the pistol was scanning the room when his gaze landed on the elderly patient still lying in her bed, too weak to run. "You," he snarled, pointing the weapon at her. "You look comfortable. Maybe some motivation will help." He began to raise the gun toward the defenseless woman. That's when Isabel moved. She didn't run toward the gunman. She didn't shout a warning. She simply flowed in one continuous motion. She bent low, scooped up Dr. Gustav's Glock with her right hand, while her left hand grabbed a surgical clamp from the fallen medical tray. The safety disengaged with a soft click as her thumb found it automatically. Her body pivoted, feet finding perfect shooting stance, weapon rising to eye level with mechanical precision. The gunman with the shotgun noticed her first. "Hey, what?" The first shot took him in the right kneecap. He screamed and toppled forward, the shotgun discharging harmlessly into the ceiling tiles as he fell. The second gunman spun toward the sound, but Isabel was already adjusting her aim. Her second shot punched through his forehead with surgical accuracy. He dropped like a marionette with cut strings. The entire engagement lasted 4.3 seconds. The trauma ward fell into absolute silence, except for the groaning of the wounded gunman clutching his shattered knee. Smoke drifted lazily from the Glock's barrel as Isabel maintained her shooting stance, scanning for additional threats. Finding none, she calmly walked over to the groaning gunman, removed his weapons, and zip-tied his hands with medical tubing, all while keeping her weapon trained on him. Only then did she pick up the security guard's radio. "Dispatch, this is trauma ward. Code Silver resolved. 2 hostiles down, 1 in custody. We need police and additional medical for 1 GSW to the knee and multiple civilian casualties." Her voice was steady, professional, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. She set the radio down, walked over, and gently placed Dr. Gustav's Glock on the medical cart beside him. Then she picked up her mop and began cleaning the blood from the floor. Every person in that trauma ward, patients, nurses, doctors, stared at her in complete shock. The woman they'd called Ghost Mop had just neutralized 2 armed gunmen with the efficiency of a trained killer. And now she was back to mopping floors like nothing had happened. They thought she was the janitor, but they didn't know she had cleaned up far bloodier battlefields. They thought she was invisible. But in the most dangerous moment, she became the only person everyone could see. When danger strikes and the protectors fall, who stands up? A hero in a uniform or the silent ghost in the corner? And when violence is the only answer, whose instincts take over? Common instinct, if you believe some skills never fade, they just wait to be awakened. FBI Special Agent Freya Lind arrived at Valley Grove Medical Center 53 minutes after the shooting. She'd been enjoying a quiet evening at home when her phone exploded with calls about a custodial worker with advanced tactical training who had neutralized armed intruders at a hospital. At first, she'd assumed it was another case of mistaken identity or exaggerated witness testimony. Civilians often embellish details. When recounting traumatic events, a lucky shot became expert marksmanship, a fortunate accident became tactical brilliance. But as she reviewed the preliminary reports in her car, the details didn't add up to luck. 2 precision shots, perfect tactical positioning, professional grade threat assessment, textbook hostage situation resolution. This wasn't a civilian getting lucky. This was someone with serious training. The first thing Lynn did was examine the security footage. Valley Grove's cameras covered every angle of the trauma ward, and the timestamp showed everything had unfolded exactly as witnesses described. She watched the gunman enter, watched the chaos unfold, watched Dr. Gustav fall and his weapon skitter across the floor. Then she watched Isabel Moreau move. Lynn had spent 12 years analyzing tactical operations for the Bureau. She'd reviewed footage of Navy SEALs, Delta Force operators, CIA paramilitary officers, and every other elite unit in the American arsenal. What she saw on that hospital security tape made her blood run cold. The weapon acquisition was flawless, smooth, efficient, no wasted motion. The shooting stance was textbook Weaver position, perfect for quick target acquisition in close quarters. The double tap to different targets showed advanced training in threat prioritization. But it was the small details that revealed the truth. The way Isabel's eyes tracked the room before moving, cataloging threats in civilian positions, the slight adjustment of her foot position to account for blood on the floor affecting her grip, the professional restraint of the kneecap shot disabling rather than killing when possible. Jesus Christ, Lind whispered, rewinding the footage for the 3rd time. I know this shooting style. She pulled out her secure phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 4 years. Klaus, it's Lind. I need you to run a facial recognition scan on someone, high priority, and pull up the Zeta 9 archive files. Zeta 9? Klaus's voice sharpened. Lind, those files are classified above your clearance level. That operation was... Klaus, just run the scan. Trust me on this one. 20 minutes later, her phone buzzed with an encrypted message that made her hands shake. Facial recognition match. 94.7% probability. Subject, Isabel DuPont. Classification, Zeta 9 operative. Deceased status, Kaya, Bogota, Colombia. 7 years ago. Clearance required for full file access. Lynn's mind raced. Zeta 9 had been one of the CIA's most classified paramilitary units. They specialized in deep cover operations, urban warfare, and problem solving in areas where conventional military couldn't operate. The team had been comprised of 6 operators, each with specialized skills. Isabel Moreau had been their close quarters combat specialist, her call sign, Ghost Knife. The official report stated that the entire Zeta 9 team had been killed in a bombing during a cartel infiltration mission in Colombia. No bodies recovered due to the explosion's intensity. Case closed. Families notified. Medals awarded posthumously. But if Isabel Moreau was mopping floors in a New Mexico hospital, then either the CIA had made a massive identification error 7 years ago, or one of America's most deadly operatives had been living under their noses as a janitor. Lind immediately called for backup and headed to the hospital's administrative offices to find Isabel. She was too late. The hospital's locker room for custodial staff was empty, except for a neatly folded uniform on the bench. Isabel's name tag sat on top, along with her hospital ID badge and keys. On the small table beside the lockers, Lind found a handwritten note. Agent Lind, yes, I know you're FBI. I saw the way you analyzed the footage. The person you're looking for died in Bogota 7 years ago. The woman who works here just cleans up messes and wants to be left alone. Some ghosts are better left buried. Ma'am, VA. Lynn felt a chill run down her spine. Somehow, Isabel had not only anticipated the investigation but had identified Lind as FBI just from watching her examine the scene. The note continued on the back. P.S. Check the patient roster. Victor Long isn't who you think he is, and those weren't random gunmen. Someone leaked his location. You might want to ask yourself who knew he was here. Lind immediately pulled the patient files. Victor Longa had been admitted under a false name, but his fingerprints revealed his true identity. Victor Neumann, a former Zeta-9 intelligence coordinator who had disappeared after the Bogota incident. The same incident that had supposedly killed Isabel Moreau. The same incident that Lind was beginning to suspect had been an inside job. Her phone rang. It was Dr. Gustav calling from his hospital bed where he was recovering from his gunshot wound. Agent Lind, I wanted you to know something about Isabel. She came to see me before she left. What did she say? She apologized, said she never wanted to bring violence back into her life, but she couldn't watch innocent people die. Then she said something strange. What? She said, tell Agent Lind that Zeta-9 didn't all die in Bogota, but the ones who survived learned to stay dead for a reason. Lind hung up and stared at the empty locker room. Somewhere out there, one of the most dangerous women in the world was driving away in an old pickup truck, probably heading to another city, another identity, another life of invisible service. The Bureau could launch a manhunt. They could put her face on every wanted list in the country. They could turn over every rock until they found her. But Lynn made a different choice. She walked to the hospital's parking garage, found a storm drain, and dropped Isabel's note into the darkness below. Some ghosts, she decided, deserve to stay buried, especially the ones who use their deadly skills to save lives instead of taking them. The official report would list the incident as civilian heroics during armed robbery, case closed. 3 weeks after the shooting, Valley Grove Medical Center held a small, unofficial ceremony in the trauma ward. Nothing grand or public, just the staff who had been there that night, gathering during a quiet moment between shifts. Dr. Gustav, his arm still in a sling but healing well, stood before a small wooden plaque that maintenance had quietly installed near the supply closet where Isabel used to store her cleaning cart. The plaque was simple, elegant. It bore no name, no photograph, no official recognition, just an engraved image of a mop crossed with a stethoscope, and the words, "For the guardian who cleaned more than floors." We don't know where she went, Dr. Gustav said softly to the small group assembled. We don't even know if Isabel Moreau was her real name, but we know what she did, and we know why she did it. Nurse Colette wiped her eyes. I keep looking for her during night shifts, expecting to see her around the corner with that little smile, asking if we need extra towels in room 3. She saved my life, whispered Mrs. Ingrid, the elderly patient who had been in bed when the gunmen arrived. That man was going to shoot me just to make a point, and she stepped out of the shadows like an angel of death. Heinrich from security shook his head. I've been thinking about all those little things, how she always knew where everything was, how she moved through the hospital like she memorized every inch, how she could fix anything that was broken. Maybe that's what she was doing here, suggested Dr. Beaumont, fixing things, fixing herself. The hospital administrator had wanted to contact the media, turn Isabel into a hero story for the local news. Dr. Gustav had firmly refused. She left for a reason, he told them. The last thing we should do is put her face on television. Instead, they'd quietly established a small memorial fund in her honor, not for publicity, but for the families of hospital staff who found themselves in crisis. They called it the Ghost Mop Foundation, a name that made the night shift nurses smile through their tears. Security had reviewed the footage hundreds of times. studying Isabel's movements, trying to understand what they'd witnessed. The precision was inhuman. The training was unmistakable. The restraint was what impressed them most. She could have killed both those men, Sven said from his wheelchair. He was recovering well, but would be on disability for months. That first shot to the knee, that was a choice. She chose to disable instead of eliminate when she could have. She was protecting us, even from herself. Dr. Gustav realized, making sure we didn't have to witness more death than necessary. The hospital psychological counselor, Dr. Lena Vogel, had met individually with everyone who was present that night. The trauma was real, but so was something else, a sense of awe, of having witnessed something that transcended ordinary human experience. What strikes me, Dr. Vogel told the group, is that none of you described feeling afraid of her. Even after seeing what she was capable of, you felt protected. That was the word that kept coming up in their sessions, protected. Not by a soldier, not by a police officer, not by a security guard protected by their janitor, their quiet, invisible, forgotten colleague who mopped their floors and emptied their trash and never asked for anything in return. I hope she found peace, Dr. Gustav said, placing his good hand on the memorial plaque. Wherever she is, whatever name she's using now, I hope she knows that she's remembered not for what she used to be, but for who she chose to become. The ceremony ended quietly. Staff returned to their duties. Life in the trauma ward continued. But late at night, during the quiet hours when Isabel used to work, some of the nurses swore they could still hear the soft sound of a mop moving across the floor. And somehow, that sound made them feel safe. My name is Isabel Moreau, at least that's what I've been calling myself for the past 7 years. The woman who died in Bogota had a different name. She carried different scars. She served a flag and followed orders and believed that the world could be saved with the right bullets placed in the right foreheads at the right time. I don't miss her. When I took that job at Valley Grove, I wasn't trying to hide from my past. I was trying to bury it. Every night, I cleaned up blood and bandaged wounds and empty trash cans full of discarded hopes. It was peaceful, anonymous, safe. For 7 years, I swept floors and scrubbed walls and watched doctors save lives instead of watching soldiers take them. I learned that healing makes less noise than killing, that mercy requires more strength than violence, that the hardest battles are fought not with weapons, but with patience. But that night, when I saw those gunmen threatening innocent people, when I watched that man point his weapon at a helpless elderly woman, something inside me woke up. Not the killer, not the operative. Something deeper, the protector. I didn't draw that weapon because I missed the thrill of combat. I didn't fire those shots because I wanted to feel powerful again. I acted because, in that moment, I was the only person in that room who could stop evil from winning. And sometimes, that's all it takes to be a hero. Being the person who can act when others cannot. People ask what it feels like to kill. They never ask what it feels like to save lives, to look into the eyes of a frightened patient and know that your choice to step forward instead of running away means they'll see their family again. That feels like redemption. I'm not the same woman who used to hunt targets in foreign countries, but I'm not completely different either. The skills remain. The instincts endure. The training never truly fades. The difference is choice. How we use our abilities, whether we serve darkness or light. I chose light, even when it meant stepping back into the shadows. I don't know where I'll go next. Maybe another hospital, maybe a school, maybe a quiet diner where the night shift waitress needs someone to mop floors and watch over the customers who stumble in seeking warmth and coffee in a moment of safety in an uncertain world. Wherever I go, I'll be invisible again, just another face in the crowd, another worker doing a job that people don't notice. But I'll be there, watching, waiting, ready. Because the world needs guardians. It needs people who choose protection over profit, service over recognition, sacrifice over safety. It needs ghosts who mop floors. And sometimes, when the lights go out and evil comes calling, it needs those ghosts to remember how to fight. My name is Isabel Moreau, and I clean up messes. All kinds of messes. Subscribe to QH Incredible Stories if you believe some warriors walk among us not seeking glory, but ready when darkness falls.